Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host, Bryan. We're going to continue on with this week's theme of bands with misspelled words in their name. Today we're looking at Vektor with a K instead of a C. We're looking at the much requested Charging the Void. And I recall we listened to Recharging the Void not that long ago, so I went and gave it another listen, kind of refreshed myself on it. It's interesting that is the album closer and this is the album opener. But it also kind of makes sense linearly. We charge the void first, then we recharge it to end the album. But yeah, I'm going into this expecting blackened vocals, classical style chords, and thrashy metal. So, let's see what's going on with Vektor's Charging the Void. Interesting start. We had like an atmospheric like train screeching and something whispered in my ear. Really going heavy in with the thrash right from the start. Really laying down a strong thesis statement. Really interesting is that we're looking at 3-bar phrases. Wow, what a harsh. Interesting vocal shifts. Really going for a sparser element here. Lots of bass presence. Yeah, very fun chord we're in. Oh, shift into the backbeat on the drums. Really gnarly riffage going on these last few phrases. Yeah, double time with the drums. Really nice great band fill there. It shifted to a triplet idea. Interesting, we're reutilizing the same line from the last time we took the intensity down. Expanding on it a bit though. The bass kick gallops, the harmonies. Very bright and positive ending here. Back to the triplet feel. Really fun snare accents on this section. Bass coming in with strong harmony. Very uplifting moment. Tremolo as a texture. Wire, wow, okay. Really interesting to move away from that very uplifting sound back to these gritty metal riffs. Moving right back to this positive. Oh, this is a nice reinterpretation of an idea we've had prior. Yeah. So it's that guitar bass harmony line we had like 3 sections ago with a wider drumming idea. And we finish out with more ambient sounds. Okay. Huh. So I think last time when we checked out Recharging the Void, I had mentioned that I thought it was black metal with clean production, and something that I've come up to recently, um, semi recently, I suppose, is that black metal is more of a production style than a composition style. And that black metal to me is really just blackened thrash, even though I think black metal came first and thrash came second, if I'm remembering my history correctly. But um, Blackened can be applied to a lot of different genres, and it's mostly a production thing, not so much a compositional one. So when I say that this felt like Blackened to me, I was talking about the compositional style, but honestly, it's thrash, isn't it? It has Blackened vocals, but it doesn't have Blackened production. It's actually very clean and clear production to it. That kind of goes towards I guess, a progressive thrash area is what this would be classified as. Um, and it's really neat as I learn more from you guys. Your comments let me know what's going on with the genres, and especially when we look at deep dives on older stuff, like when we did heavy metal origins, and when we've done black metal weeks and stuff like that. And you guys give me the context and the history and the evolution of metal as a genre. And I get to learn some of these things and start to piece them together in a more complete perspective. And I think that's just very cool that my understanding of what's going on here, as far as genre goes, I have such a drastically different, well, not too drastic. I have a different perspective though, and I think a more accurate one because of that. And it's just really neat to learn about all this as I'm going. So let's dive into what's actually going on here rather than talking about something that is kind of subjective. I mean, genre is kind of, it's a weird thing. It's a classification that is has loose definition. Um, so, like I said, let's just dive into what's going on here. Um, this had a lot of what I was expecting, given that I just refreshed my memory on Recharging the Void. um, and features a lot of the same things. However, this kind of takes it in a slightly different angle. Recharging the Void felt very progressive to me as far as uh, chord usage, chord usage, and overall structure. This definitely had a bit of a more progressive structure, at least to me. I had a real tough time figuring out the map of the song. In fact, as of right now, I'm not going to comment on the structure because it felt wholly linear to me. We did have a couple of callbacks, but there's no way that I could map out the structure just after this first listen. I'd have to uh, be pretty intense about it and take notes as I'm listening specifically for the structure of the track. It is a wildly dense song with some callbacks, but no usage of like a verse chorus structure. It feels wholly like a rhapsody with a couple of callbacks, and some of those callbacks were actually variations. I had mentioned, oh, that's closer to the end there. I called out that guitar, bass, octave harmony that they were doing. It was the same exact melody we had heard like two or three sections prior, but we had it with an expanded drum component to it. And no vocals, I think, at that point, too. So it was a reinterpretation of that guitar melody, or a reuse of it, if you want to think of it that way. They put it in a brand new section. Um, so yeah, it does feel a bit like a rhapsody to me. Rhapsodies are just really difficult to nail down structure unless you're being extremely focused on on specifically that. Um, and a rhapsody is pretty much just a series of ideas. It's a bit reductive, but if your song is completely linear, it's probably rhapsody or rhapsody adjacent. Um, which I think is what's going on here. But musically, it's not as progressive as Recharging the Void felt. This one seemed to stick a lot closer to traditional thrash riffs and typical thrash progressions. Um, However, one thing I do want to touch on is chords. Sometimes they do dig into very typical metal chords here. Um, But occasionally, we get these really nice runs that are based, I think, on chords that we would hear typically in Renaissance classical music. And if you've ever, if you're listening to this and like you got like the main riff going on, you're like, yeah, you just, nod along to it. It's just like it has that bite, that metal grit to it. And then they punctuate a phrase and you're like, wow, those are some interesting notes. Those are, that's a bit spicy. That sounds a bit odd. It's not very thrash. That's probably the moment I'm talking about here. Um, and it's very cool. I love hearing metal guitar tones that move outside of the mostly pentatonic and blues styles of chord progressions, where we introduce some really nice dissonant tones in our um, chords. And I understand why it's not used too often because distortion amplifies dissonance, and you can't get some of the really spicy stuff that you would hear in classical or jazz because it's just going to be noise. And there's certainly bands that utilize that to great effect. It's not like you can't hear them, but it's typically not used for the note relationship and that emotion that's coming out of that because it's getting overridden by the raw distortion and feedback you're getting out of it. And that's usually what these types of dyads and triads are used for in metal is the crunch, the grit, really getting that texture out of it, not so much the chord. So it's really nice to hear some of these spicier things going on here, and a lot of that I think comes out of the cleaner guitar tone. Um, you notice that, or at least I noticed, I don't know if they use a foot pedal to change it, or if maybe it's some sort of thing that's going on where they have specific tones on bassier notes or whatever, but the spicier chords always show up in the higher ranges. And there's some clarity there. When they get into those really gritty, meaty metal riffs, a lot of those are on the lower chords. We're getting lower notes out of them. And like I said, I don't know if they're using a pedal to switch between two tones and they switch off for the higher ones, or if you can use pedals and stuff, EQ your setup or whatever to emphasize. Like, I don't know. Guitar gear is so over my head. And when I look at these people with like 50 pedals on a board and they're all interconnected and there's like 50,000 wires between them, and like you push one button and like six lights come up, you push a different button, two of those come off, but four more come on. It's just, it goes a bit over my head. It really becomes very close to electronic music at that point when you're looking at like patch boards or whatever they're called, soundboards. Um, Synthesizers, though, right? Making your own sound. It all just goes over my head. It's too engineery for me. But I'm curious what's going on there because there is this gritty bite that I don't think would work well with some of these more dissonant tones. That comes off of the lower range riffage before we enter the really nice melodic runs that we punctuate our phrases with. Um, but yeah, it's a very nice back and forth that we hear frequently on this track here. Sometimes less frequently than I would like, but that's contrast. You never know what's around the corner because they really could be going anywhere. Speaking of riffs, we got to talk about some of these. I can't say that any of these have stuck out to me, and I'm just going to remember them off the top of my head right now after a first listen. But there are so many moments in here. I hear the riff, it's like, yeah. And it's kind of like what happened yesterday, or no, Monday with Megadeth when we checked out what was that track? I can't remember. Oh, Holy Wars, Punishment Due. It's just riff after riff after riff that are so good to listen to. And Vektor just has that it factor in their writing, where they have these riffs that are just super. They're rhythmically fun to listen to. They've got that metal bite. They just sound cool. Definitely the rule of cool style of writing, where it doesn't matter so much about the theory behind it, so much that it just sounds awesome, and they have a knack for that. I'm not going to say that every single riff in here was phenomenal. There were a couple where I was like, okay, this is a good thrash riff, but it's not anything that's, sitting above the bar. But there were plenty where I was like, yeah, this is one of the best thrash style riffs I've heard. And it could just be that I don't listen to a lot of thrash, which is very accurate. Megadeth and some early Metallica is probably all the thrash I've listened to. And as I mentioned on Monday, I haven't even listened to a lot of Megadeth. I've listened to System Has Failed and a Greatest Hits album, which was part thrash stuff and part of their newer rock uh, direction that they went into later in their career. So, yeah, I don't have a lot of history. These could, for all I know, just be rather standard thrash riffs, but a lot of them are just really solid, really good stuff. Vocals are interesting though, and this is something really interesting for me, because not only do they feel like Blackened harshes on top of thrash music, which thrash music is sort of a basis for black metal, which kind of leads me into thinking, last time that this was a black metal band just with hi-fi production. Um, but not only do they have that black metal style, really narrow, sort of harsh, but they're very high pitched. I mean, they're not always. Our vocalist does kind of dig into the grit a little bit and bury the tone and kind of get a lower growl out of it. But a lot of it is sort of higher pitched and it feels so effortless. I don't know if that's just me. It feels like this might as well be the vocalist's speaking voice. It just feels so calm and comfortable for the vocalist to have this very compressed, gnarly, like goblin-esque vocal style. And what's even cooler, though, and this is why I wanted to bring up this topic specifically, because I don't think I really expanded into anything deep in that little gushing about the vocal work. Whistle tones with blackened vocals. What? Okay, so whistle tones are very cool. Um, it is a I don't know the exact science behind it. I probably should look this up because it's very neat phenomenon. But I believe it is basically making a whistle with some of your muscles back here around, I don't know, the diaphragm? Nope, that doesn't sound right. Again, I'm not a vocal coach and I definitely don't have proper knowledge on this, but you make the tone back here, but it's not with your vocal cords, I don't think. Um, and you can get some really high pitched stuff out of it. Um, I know Maria Brink from In This Moment combines whistle tones with a lot of like fry screams, and she gets these really high pitched screams. And whistle tones are also very popular in opera. It's how these vocalists get these very high pitched tones. Again, like I said, I don't know the exact science behind it. I'm sure you can find something on YouTube or doing a web search. Probably definitely more informed than me, but I do know they exist. I never heard them with black metal vocals though, and it's very interesting um, here because it feels very pointed and it still has a bit of that bite, but the dude hit some high pitched note. Keo is another vocalist who's known to use them. Deering Gray's vocalist. He uses whistle tones both in clean and in harsh vocals. It's a very cool technique, especially as I hear more and more of it being combined with compression and harsh delivery. It's very interesting to hear how these things can be mixed. Something more of a classical technique with harsher metal techniques, and we get very cool results like we did here. Um, yeah, it just kind of blew my mind. And it's not like it was an accident. The dude pulled it off twice, so it makes me think that there's a lot of intention and control in doing that. Um, I don't remember talking about that at all in Recharging the Void, though, so it might be something sparsely used, but the vocalist pulls it out when they know they want to, not something they put in every album or every track. But yeah, definitely a very cool thing. I had to talk about that because you don't expect it. You really don't. There's so few vocalists who utilize it because, again, to me, it's an operatic method, an operatic delivery style. Um, so yeah, that was neat. Um, we got to talk about the shift. We did very typical thrashy riffs with some classical ideas here and there, classical melodic ideas here and there. That was a majority of the track for like the first 6 or 7 minutes. And then out of nowhere, we shift from that gritty, biting, cool sounding metal riffage into very uplifting, melodic, suspended writing. We got away from a lot of those the gallops and the tremolo picking and the 16th notes, and we moved to these suspended tones. And we also shifted our note selection into a mode or possibly even a key that gave us the tools to create something very beautiful and positive and um, energizing, I would even say. There's just a lot of hope in these sections. And I pointed out one of them um, during the reaction, and we actually revisited this, which was just bizarre. It's a beautiful moment of the track, though. Um, and I'm really curious to get into the lyrics here and see where any of this fits in because to me, it's sort of like an oddity. There's all this just raw metal aggression. It's not angry, it's not sorrowful, but it's definitely not a happy sounding song throughout most of it. Like I said, it's just got that metal aggression to it, that bite. Um, the edge, I think, is actually it's got that metal edge, and then we just have this uplifting moment. And we do eventually work in some of the melodic, I mean, some of the metal compositional ideas. We do bring back some of the faster playing so we're not suspended, but our chord, our mode, is still bright. It's still optimistic. It's still enlightening. Um, and we move out of that, just flip right back to the metal element. Okay, whatever. We're going to stick with this to the end. And then, like a minute to go, we go back to the enlightenment, the positivity. It's very unexpected and very unique. I mean, that's not to say that we haven't heard songs that shift their emotional atmosphere around before, but at least to me, I don't think I've heard stuff with that metal rule of cool. Like I don't really apply an emotion to metal riffage like this stuff that came out of the 80s and 90s. Yeah, I guess the 80s and early 90s metal scenes. I don't really apply an emotion to them. They're just I call it the metal aggression or the metal edge, and that kind of implies a sharpness or an anger, but I don't apply those emotions to it. It just kind of is. And I think that's why I keep reverting back to the rule of cool, because they don't sound aggressive, but they are kind of aggressive sounds. But they do sound cool. I think that's what I want to keep leaning on because it's not always about an anger in the emotion, but they do just sound really cool. And that's what they're going for. But to shift from that into a mode that I just don't hear with metal too often. Happy metal is kind of odd. We don't hear it too often. And then enlightening metal or just wholesome, positive, like being a beacon of light to others, hope. That's what I get out of these moments. And it's not like it's like I said, it's not like this is the only band that's ever done this, but it's just I don't think I've ever heard it. Again, I haven't listened to a lot of thrash. I've never heard it paired with this type of metal before. Usually these, because this requires, at least to my ears, a bit of music theory. You have to understand what chords are going to create what kind of sounds, and what modes are going to influence what emotional vibes in your music to achieve this. writing metal riffs can just be emulating your inspirations. You figure out what notes most people tend to play because a lot of rock band or a lot of metal bands are all kind of based on the same modes. They're all based on the same shapes. If you don't even want to learn the notes, you just kind of learn chord shapes and work with those. But this, to me, showcases an understanding outside of the metal sphere. There is a musical understanding of chord theory here. Um, and like I said, to me, it's that extra oomph. It's that it factor that kind of tells me that this isn't just a metal band. Not that that's a detractor, but that they understand at least some aspect of music to achieve this very specific vibes they want within the sound that they want. This could easily have turned into something that sounded too poppy, but it still retained that metal feeling while still going for the emotions they wanted. And like I said, that to me showcases a little bit more musical understanding than I typically attribute to a thrash metal band. And I don't want that to sound derogatory, but like I said, with thrash metal, you can pretty much just emulate your greats, your inspirations, and not really have to learn the theory behind it in order to play very good, very awesome, fun uh, thrash metal. It's not like prog, which kind of assumes you have some sort of understanding of music because the basis of prog rock and prog metal typically implies at least chord theory understanding because you're going to be playing around with chords and time signatures and all sorts of stuff. Again, like I said, I'm not trying to downplay thrash, just speaking facts here. Um, so yeah, very interesting to hear them shift to that so late in the game as well. Like I said, we were like 70% done with the track before we even hit this moment. Um, Although actually I should have kind of expected something, maybe not necessarily that, but they did showcase an understanding of Renaissance style chord progression or chordal usage by punctuating their thrash riff phrases with these really neat ideas. So yeah, I was probably underestimating them a bit. I had information to tell me they could have done this, and I just underestimated them. Um, I think that's about it though. The guitar. Oh, the bass. Not much to say there. Just really, I have to bring up the bass when I hear it. Metal music needs more bass. So if I hear the bass, I'm talking about it. I really love that it's here. It had a couple of its own lines, which was just gorgeous. I love. It's a really nice bass tone too. They let the guitarist have that sharp, pointed edge and gave the bass this nice, round, warm tone. Um, and it complements the guitar so well when they're working in harmony with each other. It is a beautiful tone combination. I love everything about the guitar tone and the bass tone working together. I wish I heard the bass a little bit more in some of the earlier sections, but we did get into a more traditional metal section there at the end where the bass was present. I don't know what the difference is between the two, but I'm glad that I eventually heard more bass work. Maybe it was just, I don't know, my equipment, my ears. I did turn the volume up a little bit halfway through. I don't even remember why I did that. Maybe that influenced it. I don't know. But yeah, I'm really happy to hear the bass in a metal track. And I think that's it. We did hit that interlude, which was interesting too. But I don't have any comments on that. It was just really nice to take a breather from everything else. And then we did revisit that later, so that was cool. The 6/8 feel that we hit, um, and then the fact that the opening moment was in 4/4, but 12 beat phrases, which is 3 bars of 4/4, which is very odd. But again, I don't have any comments on it. It was just an interesting choice. So yeah, let's dive into some lyrics here. I think I'm losing my. Oh, I cannot say that like that. Apparently, my vocal cords are not like that. Um, Before we get into the lyrics, I want to talk about the intro a little bit. This is the first track on the album, and it starts off with a little bit of an atmospheric idea. We have ambient tones, and then what sounds like a train pulling in to a screeching stop. Like the brakes just need a lot of work. Um, and then something gets whispered in my ear, and I think it's this, says I'm losing my mind. That sounds vaguely familiar, and it's also isolated in the lyrics list, so I'm kind of hoping that's it. It makes me think that this is going to be a story-based track, which I think, if I remember right, people told me on Recharging the Void this is a concept album. Um, yeah, just really interesting. We dive in with almost uh, what is it? Uh, creating a setting, right? We have somebody on a train coming to a halt, possibly getting off at a station or a stop, and believing that they're losing their mind right out the gate. So much so that it's whispered so quietly. Interesting. All right, let's get back into the lyrics here. Blasting forward through the filamentous sky, beckoned by the flash of exploding light, my soul crosses over the great divide. There's a lot of lyrics here. So this dude just died? I don't know what a filamentous sky is. Is this the band that utilized so many words I felt I needed a dictionary? I mean, I got a pretty good vocabulary myself, and I remember a band lately having a diction that was just so far beyond me. And was it Vektor? I don't remember. That's a good word though. I gotta look that one up. But blasting forward through the filamentous sky, beckoned by the flash of exploding light, I died. Which I think is what they're the Great Divide, right? That's passing over to the other side. Chorus, charging the void, isolated, I've been redeployed, a rider on the crest, carry forth or plummet to death. So they've been tasked with the job to charge the void. And if they choose not to do this task, they plummet to their death. Is that what I'm reading here? Autopilot function has been overridden. For isolation subjects, choice has been forbidden, but death and destruction are what I've been given. So autopilot function has been overridden. They have a choice now. They're not on autopilot, but that choice has also been forbidden. I think that just means that it's assumed they're going to carry out the idea of charging the void, which I believe is going to lead to destruction. The other choice is personal death, as he says, carry forth or plummet to death. We go back to the idea of charging the void. Isolation has been redeployed. Particles known only in theory within my grasp, entering the cloud of the exploded mass. To live is to die, disjunction seals our fates. So many tyrants lie, pleading at the gates, regimes at an end with policies left to amend. Where would the future lie if regimes had time to bide? So bring into me morbid mastery, I shall revoke the throne atop the stellar tree. I choose a different path from those now dead in the mire. They could not wield the flame of life to which now I conspire. So interesting. Earlier mentioned for isolation subjects, choice has been forbidden. I wonder if this isolation is capitalized. Interestingly, not sure if that is a mistake or not, but it could be referring to a specific uh, group of people, a proper pronoun there. Um, but there's rulers who lie to get their way, and regimes that have their own agendas ahead of them. And it seems that this person or narrator is on the opposing end of that. They are not part of the ruling class. I feel like this comes up so often in songs. So it seems that our narrator is going against the grain, choosing not to carry out the task they've been given, instead trying to take down those who issue these commands, the ruling class, the tyrants, and regimes. I charged the void, I found the purpose, immortalized this life, I'll return to the surface. A lust for control and power has grown in isolation. A sky that once brought hope and light now brings me desolation. I must wield the sands of time to reclaim what is mine. Interesting, because I was kind of backtracking here about the Great Divide being the passing over into the other side, dying. Um, but then we had a couple of moments of bringing up the idea that personal death is at stake here. You either carry forth your commands or plummet to death. So the Great Divide might be something else. But then he also says that he wields the sands of time to reclaim what is mine. So it could be that he has found a way to go back in time. Sands of time, as far as I know, it is a way to control the flow of time itself. And it could be that he's found a way to go before his death. I don't know. Either one is possible. This seems to be very, I don't know, to be sci-fi. It's very, I think it's metaphorically appropriate for our times and universe, but so much of it also feels futuristic. And I don't know if that's just vocabulary being used, because there is no moment here where they're like, oh, I have a space laser, or, anything that really designates science fiction. But I kind of get those vibes, anyways. Stargazers have made the claims of Enocules bursting from all shane, deep within the serpent's spire, I forge a path that takes me higher. I've crossed the great divide, now I peer to the depths of death's door. Through the rippling veil I acquire the dust of life that Cygnus obscures. To the other side I have done it, I now command the draw of death's door. To the relic all shane, now I've got it, a molecule like nothing before. So yeah, I think we are in this idea of taking control of one's life and going against those in power despite having crossed over to death, has passed on. Starfields of Aquila set ablaze, reap the ashes of the great Eshlane. Relic Eshlane, O Shahin, Shahin-e Tarazu, now my flesh is born anew. Within my hands I hold the sands, the sky of pillar gives life and land, the blackest night unveiling death, one inhaling, exhaling breath of the swan with blackened wings outstretched, a path unseen unfolds for me, I charge the void and ascend the tree to the bird of morbid mastery. I heed the Cygnus call, they will want the dust obtained through my gall. I bring the gift of extended life, no longer will control be born of strife. I burn through disregarded space, dispatched, forgotten, now I stake my independent claim, I will rule this stark domain. So yeah, it seems like this person has found a way to conquer death itself and has found a way back to the land of the living, or possibly even just back to their home world, and is planning to give this power to those who are not in control, who are not the ruling class, so that we can fight back and he can fix the world, it seems. No longer will control be born of strife, and I will rule this stark domain. So he plans to take over this area through his newfound power and dominion over life and death. Interesting. Oh, something else that probably gives me the sci-fi feel is the giant spaceship hovering over several planets on the album art. That that could do it, right? Yeah, as far as tying the themes together, I mean, there's definitely a lot of negativity throughout some of this. There is disdain for the ruling class and a want for more out of life, feeling completely out of control. And when we get to the end, we do have a couple of moments of optimism as this person begins to acquire their power and realize what they can do with it and plan out, how they're going to attempt to take back the domain, the planet, the area that they live in. So I do see some of these parallels in the emotional elements here, but otherwise, I wouldn't say that there's a strong tying together of the lyrical themes and emotions with the musical ones. It feels like a very interesting story being told on top of uh, thrash metal. Just the two are working together because that's what they do. Our vocalist or our lyricist, anyways, wants to tell the story, and the band that they're a part of makes progressive music, progressive thrash metal. So that's just kind of how they worked it together. Interesting stuff, though. This band always has me impressed with how they combine their ideas. Those are my thoughts, though, on Vektor's Charging the Void. Just where you guys come in, hit me up in the comments. Let me know if you enjoyed this or not, anything that stood out to you, anything you'd like to correct me on or add on to what I stated. Let me know down there. Above the comment section is a description box. In there is a link for Linktree. It'll take you to this menu right here. It has links for everything related to the channel on it. You can support the channel in a variety of ways and join several of the communities that revolve around the channel. You can also find a lot of other links in there, such as emailing me, checking out my music, personal stuff if you're interested in that. Above the description box, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all three of those. All right, we have a special selection coming up next. Otherwise, be back tomorrow. We're going to be looking at another misspelled band and a special selection. That's what they're called. All right, until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening whenever you choose to watch my videos.